welcome to Raising Voices. My two lovely, wonderful guests today are Shae and Calon from the Transgada. Did I say that right, Calon?
That's good enough.
Website,
That's good
YouTube
enough.
channel. We're going to be
Look, Jen,
talking.
I can't even pronounce it right, and I co-host on the channel. Okay.
Oh, that's entirely your problem, not mine.
Exactly.
True.
We're going to be talking about obviously trans issues today, and problems that minorities face within society, and lifting up their voices because they have a wonderful channel that helps raise other trans people's voices, and I think they're absolutely amazing. I love these two girls, they're brilliant. So if you're not subscribed to them, the links are down in the description. We're going to talk about the elephant in the room a little bit. The riots.
Seriously, go subscribe to us. We're really close to 100.
I'll get them to 100, please. I'd be absolutely brilliant if we got them to 100 during this stream. Now, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room a little bit, as in the riots that are happening in the US. Now, whilst there are protests in my own country about police brutality and the effects that is having towards especially people of colour, but not just people of colour. I mean, any minority can be affected by the bigotry that's systemic within police forces, especially in the US. It is very important to point out the danger for people because of the writing and because of people having to stand up for their rights. And most of the danger is actually coming from the police force in the US. The fact that there isn't the control there within the police force, and because there aren't as good a rules within the US, this is my perspective as somebody from the outside looking in, to protect and serve, which is what the police are meant to be doing. You've got this situation
Protect,
where protect and serve.
Why would you
Sorry?
Why would you protect and serve when you can curb stomp?
So that's the thing, isn't it? It's curb stomping. It's pulling down a woman's face mask so that you can spray pepper spray in her face. I mean, this kind of and she's already on her knees, with her hands behind her head because she's already listened to what this officer has said to her, and he just walks up, pulls down her mask, and sprays her in the face. What the actual fuck? These people shouldn't be police officers. I understand that under stressful situations, people will take extreme measures. And that's probably just as true for these police officers. Some of them probably actually do feel in danger themselves. But it should never have got like this in the first place.
Right, so I can actually speak a little bit to that phenomenon.
Please.
At least from a study's perspective in terms of criminology. So a lot of the initial wave of sort of police brutality, that's sort of like.
By the way, you guys hit
really
100.
Yay!
Thank you so much. I saw it in the chat, but I was like, Calon was talking, so probably.
I just wanted to say it so you guys could go yay.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Alrighty,
much.
thank you. Yeah. So
Now we're up to 200. Help us out.
So initially, the phenomenon of police brutality really wasn't in as much of the public conscience as it is, say, as it was before Ferguson. Mainly because the problem tended to be with what are so-called, and I don't like this term personally, but gypsy cops. That's what they're called. Now, these cops are basically are the cops who are responsible for a large percentage of the some of the more infamous cases of police brutality, at least those that reach the media.
Yeah.
What those cops are is usually they go, they apply, they get into the academy, they go for all that, and then they do something and screw up. And so when they screw up, they get fired. Now, one of the problems is in the U.S. is that we have this law where employers sort of aren't supposed to talk to one another. And so what they do is I got fired in this precinct, so I'm just going to jump over into the next precinct and work over there.
Yeah.
They do that, and they don't get really a correction for their previous behavior, and so this is when sort of some of the cases of police brutality started. Now, obviously, there's a much worse systemic problem here than just a couple of renegade cops. There is also a general police culture, and the best way I can describe the culture actually is to compare actually with gangs. Because really, at the end of the day, when you look at gangs in terms of their functionality within society, the only difference between a gang and a cop is that one has a police badge and one doesn't. Their social structures are fairly similar and they serve similar functions. Like the police serve a function to enforce normative societal rules, gangs actually will rise up to do the same thing for their own generally unpoliced areas. Because, like it or not, police resources aren't unlimited. There's only so much they can do, so much area they can cover. And so some areas, some neighborhoods don't end up getting patrolled by police as often. And when these neighborhoods are especially poor, this can lead to a phenomenon called differential advantage. What we mean by this is basically you have all the rich people on one side, all the poor people on another side. The rich, it's great. For the poor, it sucks. Sometimes it sucks down to the point to where there's like no income into a neighborhood, and when it gets to that level, when it gets to that low, that's where things like drug running and whatnot become not only a thing, but become essential to that community in order to have anything to pay for anything. It's like I remember from reading one ethnography on it. One person's mother said, "Don't go like out there think of Jesus," and the response was, "Jesus is all nice and whatnot, but Jesus ain't putting food on this table."
Yeah, I've heard that one before. Is
And the thing
this
is, that guy went. Hmm? Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, is this a systemic problem because, especially in the US, where you don't have a good social security system, so there's no, there isn't a good safety net for people who are unemployed and less privileged in society.
That is part of
Yeah,
the
that's.
problem. Oh, Shay, you were saying something?
I was gonna say, like, crime doesn't happen unless there's a need that society isn't meeting.
Yeah,
Like,
Well,
oftentimes, like, things like disability pay or even like welfare programs don't pay enough. And if you're less likely to get a job because, like, the color of your skin, you might turn to something that, like, will get you that money, will be able to feed your kids, like those kind of
yeah,
things. And like,
well, let me put it this way.
I don't
Um,
know if I feel too comfortable like talking about like these things because I'm not like a person of color,
well,
but like,
it's
you're still part of a
yeah, I can
minority, though.
speak. Yeah, and also
it,
I do. There
but
are some statistics that we can bring up that show sort of the plight. Like, for example, do you know what the difference is between cocaine versus crack cocaine?
No, I don't
baking soda.
actually.
The difference is baking soda.
Yeah,
Now, that difference between crack cocaine and regular cocaine, crack cocaine can net you like 10 times the profit of regular cocaine. All you have to do is add baking soda. Of course, granted, one gets you about 80 times longer in jail than the other. But the whole point is when you have that solution to feed your family and it's immediate, it's exactly what you need in terms of cash inflow,
yeah,
it becomes a moral imperative at that point to sell crack because you got to feed people.
yeah. Well, because people have to survive, and you do what you can to survive. And we've taken a lot of opportunities away from people to enable them to provide for themselves.
Right. And that's what a lot of white America misses. They don't understand the like the way that people of color are really fucked over.
Yeah,
I don't I was always personally confused about why white people didn't see it. I mean, when you look at like just looking at immigrant communities and sort of how they come up in society into their various positions, there tends to be a gradual. If you look at it, like for example, when the Irish first came over here, they were considered outsiders. Then gradually they integrated in, and then finally they came up, and now nobody really bats an eye when someone says they're an Irish. They're an Irish American. Same thing with Canadian American, um, or any other white nationality. But when blacks were brought over, for example, they were brought over here as slaves. They're working from the way rock bottom, and unfortunately, the society has not moved far enough as of yet to be very accommodating to them. If I'm making any sense,
Yeah.
they have
No,
to
you're
start at
making,
their.
you're making total sense.
It's like black communities are still like experiencing like the all the problems that came with like redlining, although it was still outlawed in like the 50s. Like this leaves like a generational. This has like a
Exactly.
generational impact on like their communities as well.
It's not.
Uh,
It's not just the
so
redlining that really screwed people over. It's also in terms of like the education system. Like financial literacy is something that's much to be desired among, especially the poor of Americans. In fact, that's one of the reasons why we got into the housing crisis of 2008, is because they would offer these
illegal
subprime
redlining.
yeah, they would
Yeah.
offer those subprime mortgages, and unfortunately, a lot of people couldn't see through them, and so we ended up with this crisis, which, it was all preventable, but the system said, no, fuck you.
Oh, we, lo- we lost Shae.
So, I'm sure
She'll
she'll
be
be
back.
back in a minute.
She'll be back in a second, everyone.
But, yeah, when it comes to,
Here she is. Welcome
Sorry,
back.
There
weird
she is.
glitch. I just got kicked out randomly.
Weird.
Your
Yeah, I
face
don't
is
know.
too pretty.
YouTube
Maybe.
hates us.
Hate how it
YouTube is transphobic.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
YouTube is transphobic. It's officially confirmed.
Yeah.
Not that it needed any more confirmation given how they demonetize trans content. But
Oh,
hey,
exactly. It's ridiculous. It doesn't even have to be
because
trans content. You can just be a trans person making content.
this is true. Because, Saudi Arabia apparently matters.
Yeah.
Or many of these other transphobic, homophobic countries where it's just no.
I think at the moment with YouTube, just having LGBT in your tags can be enough to be demonetized.
Yeah, I'm still throwing
Yeah.
it in there.
Yeah, I do too. But
So
that's
yes, for those
beside the
people
point.
wondering, for those who are wondering, YouTube is homophobic, transphobic, biphobic. We can go down the list, but that list would take a while.
They're GRSM phobic.
Oh, definitely.
Yes. Yeah, but when it comes to like these systemic areas, there's also basically you have minorities constantly being fucked over, on not just even on a minority front, but also from an SES front. Are you familiar with the term SES?
I've never heard of it.
Socioeconomic status.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh,
Yep.
Not familiar with the acronym. I'm familiar with the term.
Yeah, same here. I wasn't familiar with the acronym, but the term.
Yeah, it turns out economics is an important part of sociology, so we just
Funny
abbreviated
that, eh?
Yeah, who would have thought? Economics and sociology, huh?
Yeah,
Actually, to be fair, part of sociology actually emerged from economics.
Well, that would make sense. But I mean, it's studying social issues has been around since the Greeks, so
It has been. It just hasn't been as systematized as it was until we get Durkheim and Max Weber and those various other famous sociologists who probably nobody has heard of unless you've been somewhat associated with the field. Oh yes, and Karl Marx, even though Marx wrote more on he wrote more on economics than he really did on sociology, but his conflict theory is extremely useful, even beyond what most people think. And yes, you are taught Marx in sociology, but we have actually learned to move on beyond Marx as well. So it's not just economics that is the issue. It's also gender, race, obviously, and all these other things.
We don't support class reductionists, okay?
Exactly. for those who don't know the term, class reductionist is basically those people who say, well, it's all either it's all due every problem is due to rich versus poor, which is not the case.
Oh no, definitely not. There is certainly an element of the wealthy dictating to the less privileged, but it's not all about that. No.
Well, I mean, it's not all about that, like, in terms of, like, what the general conflict necessarily is. Because, like, so, see, another sociologist who is very well known, C. Wright Mills, he writes about the power structure in America and basically how the wealthy elite sort of set the culture that everyone around them tries to emulate or work towards. So, like, everything you do
Yeah.
is ultimately to benefit some rich person. Like, you go to, like, for example, a rich person has a butler. Well, the butler's got to eat, so the butler goes to a restaurant. Well, the waiter's got to eat, so the waiter, and it goes down, down, and down the line to where it's all ultimately aiming towards sort of the central sort of core culture that is in control. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're just listening
And so,
because you're being interesting,
Yeah.
Cal.
so
When you stop
She's
being
like
interesting, I'll
a
talk
million
over you.
tiers above me here, and I just love listening to Calon. Very educational.
Yeah.
I try. But yeah. So basically, what you have is you have sort of this core of rich people, and then you have everyone else around the rich people. And because the rich people set the culture, that culture sort of gets transmitted down the socioeconomic statuses.
Yeah.
So you go so the further down the chain you go, the sort of I wouldn't. You can almost characterize it as a sort of distortion, but I don't like using the term distortion because of its negative connotation. I'm going to say variation. That's a better term.
Yeah.
Or deviation is another term that we would use. In fact, we even have. In fact, I even had to take a class in the sociology of deviance. Why are there deviant subgroups and whatnot? Fun class, by the way. Highly recommended. It's sociology of deviance is actually really interesting. But anyhow, so back to the conflict perspective I was just talking about. So yeah, what you have is because you have like this sort of core group, acceptance a lot of the times tends to depend on this core group. So in other words, to answer the question, when are gays going to be accepted? When are black people going to be accepted? Well,
Yeah.
that depends in a way on the demographic core group, on the demographics of the core group, which when you look at Congress, I mean, there's like no diversity. It's
Oh
all just
no.
old white men.
And I mean, it's probably worse for you guys because yeah, you're dealing with basically all white men, but your politics. I mean, even the Democrats themselves are fairly center. They're not really a left party, so.
I think one of the
Usually
best ways
their,
I heard.
like, support.
Sorry?
Usually, the support for marginalized groups is very performative, but
Yeah.
when they're
If you
writing
want to,
policy, it's very for the status quo.
Yeah.
if you want to put this in functionalist terms, for those people who like biology, the Republican Party serves the function of representing the ruling class. The Democrats represent putting the band-aid on minorities so that way we don't revolt.
Yeah. Whereas, like for us, both our parties are fairly centrist in nature. That you've got one party's more left than the and one party's slightly more right, but they're both fairly centrist in nature. So in Australia, while some of these issues do crop up, they don't crop up in the same extreme ways that they do in the US.
Do you want to say something, Shae?
It was like in Australia, there's like a big fight for indigenous rights, isn't there?
There is
Didn't you
there
guys
is
just blow up a
definitely.
mine?
Sorry.
Or didn't a mining company just blow up a sacred site?
Maybe that wouldn't surprise me at
Oh,
all.
is that not?
They wouldn't have done it if it's already registered. But if it was up for registering and they had access to the land up front, yeah, there has, like in any place, large industries are a law unto them fucking selves if they get away with that, and they will do things like that because, oh, well, sorry, we've already done it and now it no longer exists. That happens everywhere, and that's a failure of the companies. If it was a sacred site within the rule about Aboriginal ownership of sacred lands, they will probably get their asses sued over it. But that doesn't restore the sacred land.
Yeah, no. Once sacred land is gone, I mean, in part, it's up to the theology whether it can be restored or not. But the original, the continuity is at the very least interrupted, if not outright destroyed, which is a tragic in itself.
Oh, I
Does the
100% agree. Yeah.
Does the state not do anything when like companies do that?
No.
So
Same thing here in the U.S. actually.
Yeah, state-sanctioned cultural genocide. Then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Well, I mean, that was our system for it here was very different to what you guys had in the US, because the Australian system of state-sanctioned cultural genocide was stolen generation. Take children away from their parents and try to bring them up white.
We did that too.
And then bad. The other thing was
that's going to be a yikes for me, dog.
And the other thing was the whole thing of and it's still done to a certain extent, the whole thing of culturally convert through handouts. So if you conform to what society is telling you have to do, we'll help you. If not, go live in the bush. Go back to your tribal ways. That's fine, we'll let you do that, but you don't get access to any of the modern cons that we have. So if you want
to assimilate or like
assimilate or struggle, basically, yeah. And it was very much a policy up until about the 70s of the Australian government. Of course, one thing we did that was very different to you is that we actually apologised for it. Our government got up and said, hey, we're sorry, we shouldn't have done this, we are fucking jerks. But that was argued against. It was our Labor Party, which is our right-wing party here, that got up and did that.
It's like flipped from the UK?
Sorry?
It's like flipped from the UK?
No, Labor is still right in the UK. Still left in the UK. What's weird in our country is the Liberal Party is actually our Conservative Party, which, you go, what?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, liberals, what? Hey, no.
Which actually makes sense if you know the broader philosophy of liberalism.
Yeah,
that was kind of the point. You have to look at the history of the parties to figure out how that came about. So over time, they became more right, but they're still centre right. They're not right. You have to go to the religious parties that exist in Australia to get to the far right, and then on the other side you've got the Greens are more left than Labor is, and then you've got some of the really far left parties that are here as well. So
I just know that
your two major parties are more central. Sorry?
I just want everyone to know that Shae and I are centrists.
Yeah, I don't believe you for a second.
Super centrist here. Like, status quo. Yeah, all right. The right and the left, they're exactly the same. Fascists on both sides, okay?
Yeah.
For those who don't know, that's a joke. We're actually, both Shae and I are far left.
Yeah.
See, for me, I... fiscally speaking, I am probably more centrist. So I'm for supporting small business and less government controls from a financial perspective in business. But socially, unlike you guys, my social reforms are very much left. So.
Well, funny thing about that is that both Shae and I are for a lot less government. In fact, we're for no government.
Anarchy. I'm not for anarchy.
We're anarchists.
I'm not. But
which, by the way,
so you're a lot more left economically than you think. Then, if you're for anarchy.
Me? No, I'm not. I'm not for anarchy. So.
Okay.
Anarchy is fun though, and plus the nice thing about anarchy
it is until it turns into anarchy with violence, which is often the case.
Well, the thing is,
No.
at least from an anarchist position, what you have to understand is that violence is systemic, and it's actually happening all the time.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
It's what the elite use to control us.
and
Is violence.
I mean, it's
The
what
state has a monopoly.
it's what happens in fascism as well. So I mean, look what's happening there now. Exactly this. Yeah, we've got back to it. I mean that.
Yeah, it's almost like we're a fascist country.
Oh well, you've definitely got a leader who models himself on other fascist leaders. So, I mean, it wouldn't
No,
surprise
that-
me if Trumpy had an altar to oh God, my brain's gone blank. They're definitely Putin
It's like
some way.
not only have they been pulling into National
Mussolini,
Guard and,
I
like,
was
shooting
thinking of
people in
actually.
Minneapolis with live rounds, like Trump is also saying he's gonna like fucking bring in the actual military to these like protests,
Yeah.
which largely start off nonviolent until they're instigated and escalated by police to not be that way.
Or from right wing, or from
Yeah.
from Nazis have been doing that.
Yeah, there
Well,
have
I
been
mean,
like
the
infiltrators and stuff, but like
yeah,
the big thing with like these types of like grassroots movements is like for the most part infiltrators are like super easy to spot, and there's a lot of self-policing that goes on in these protests. A lot of people don't seem to like realize that.
It's one of the first.
Like there's this video of this guy telling protesters to flip a truck. And the protesters that he said that to was like, "Are you asking us to flip a truck? What the fuck is wrong with you? We're not trying to like instigate here. We're not trying to escalate. The police escalate this." And then everybody starts crowding around him, and he takes off running.
Yeah, exactly.
one of the most disturbing things I read was the fact that police had opened fire on medical people who were there
Yep.
to support people. They weren't even part of the protest. They were medical staff. They had same the Red Cross stuff on them and everything, so that they were marked as medical people, and the police were shooting them with the rubber bullets and spraying pepper
were
spray
committing war
at them.
crimes?
Yeah, basically committing war crimes. It's
no, those
disgusting.
only apply to third world. No, wait, hold up. War crimes only apply to third world cesspools. Didn't you get that memo?
Yeah, well, I think
I
I
think
think
you're
that's
being
what you'd end
sarcastic.
up with if Trumpy got his way.
I'm being sarcastic, but actually, in a way, I'm not, because that is one of the huge criticisms of the UN, is that any sort of like first world nation, or so-called first world nation, is not being held responsible for their war crimes because, well, we have a big military. Russia, for example, has a big military. China has a huge military, so there's no one's going to be trying Xi Jinping, and according to the human rights, because nobody could get to Xi Jinping. There's no way to enforce them, and that's the issue with like supra governmental entities like the UN, is that, and you see this, like, for example, with the way that with the current trials that go on in like Den Haag. Den Haag is where the UN Human Rights Commission holds their trials and whatnot. The countries where war criminals actually end up getting tried are almost exclusively third world countries where someone has interceded and captured them. So, like, for example, Rajovic. I don't know, or Radic. He is a Serbian war criminal who was responsible for Sarajevo and the massacre of Srebrenica and all these other really atrocious things. Things so atrocious I won't even get into on this channel because I don't want it to get taken down. But anyhow, he was brought before the Human Rights Commission because Serbia wasn't the most powerful entity at the time. Same thing with with some of the people of the Khmer Rouge, as well as some of the warlords in Africa. All of them are consistently from these poorer nations. Whereas we commit war crimes here in the U.S. and that's fine.
Against our own people.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine.
It's not okay in any context, honestly, but like.
Oh, it's not okay, but I'm talking about from the perspective of the UN. They're just pretty much, they have no choice but to be like, it's fine, it's good, because nobody can actually get in to enforce those in the United States.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the way it is.
Do you think your political system in the United States needs a major overhaul?
I think it needs to be destroyed and burned.
I know
to the
you're all for
ground.
anarchy, but I mean, if we put the making the US an anarchistic state aside and say, could we make it better? I mean, my first thing was to get rid of the electoral college.
I feel like the clarification needs to be made that anarchy isn't about like everything burning down and destruction and chaos.
Oh no, I
and all that good stuff.
know that.
No, that's just the fun
Just
part.
in
Then
case,
you
like,
actually
people,
get the actual work of figuring out which institutions are necessary, which aren't, and then you have to go through and start setting up various things like workers' councils, getting the means of production back into the community's hands, and then also overhauling the education system, because that's abysmal at the moment. And like, honestly, sometimes I don't even know if the U.S. would be ready for, say, anarchy, because the education system is so poor that people would be like, "Oh, this means we can do whatever we want now." No, that's not what it means. What it means is that we actually have to be responsible now.
Everybody needs to go to at least one rainbow family gathering in their lifetime. Okay.
Pretty much, but yeah, with in terms of your question though about is the U.S. government worth saving, at this point the answer is kind of no. Even if I did, let's say I got rid of the electoral college, we're still facing a nation that is majority white.
Yeah.
Most middle class, not going to really
Cishet and white.
poverty, and it doesn't solve the initial problem of the wealth gap. That is the general SES situation that is currently plaguing America, where you basically have rich people who are serving as black holes of money. You put the money, it goes to the rich, and it never shows up. It doesn't go to the poor or anything.
Well, in that case, what do you think of concepts like a guaranteed basic payment? And I can't remember what the usual term is for it.
You mean like a universal basic income?
That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
So, as an anarchist, usually when we talk about if we're talking about our ideal structure, there is no money. Money simply ceases, because in an anarchist framework, once you achieve sort of the perfect anarchist ideal, you have moved into what's referred to as post-scarcity. Post-scarcity, scarcity as an economic term itself, means that, okay, there are limited resources, we have to figure out how to distribute them.
Yeah.
Scarcity is a spook.
But post-scarcity is basically where, okay, we've gotten to the point where we can produce pretty much everything with, like, no issues. Like, an example would be, go to the grocery store.
You're talking about a Star Trek ideal where anyone can get what they need.
Yeah, Star Trek, by the way, their government, when you look at it, how it works, is actually communist. They don't say it, but it actually is. It's not anarcho-communist because they still have a council, like a head presidium, but it is communist in the sense
it's also very military based. So the Starfleet itself is the ruling body. So
it's like statist communism versus like.
It's not.
Which is almost
it's not Leninism.
Like
it is. Yeah.
It's like a kind of. It's basically if Lenin had been able to enact the vision that he wanted, and this is by no means a support of Leninism. I actually don't support Leninism. Vanguardism itself is really yikesy. Vanguardism, by the way, refers to this idea that we can't make the jump immediately to socialism. We need to have sort of this vanguard party to guard the revolution against the capitalist plan. We'll try to seize back power. So, that's vanguardism. But, what was I saying? Oh yeah, Leninism.
Yeah.
In terms of the vision that it was trying to enact, the idea is that, so the Soviet Union wasn't actually fully communist.
No.
The idea is that you would have a gradual transition from is that you can't just pull out the means of production from everywhere and have everything fall into chaos and expect communism to rise out of that. Instead, the idea is we need to have a gradual transformation under which we slowly solve all the problems of scarcity, and then once the problems of scarcity have been solved, the state itself can just sort of wither away. That's the idea. That was the idea behind the Soviet Union. It didn't work out like that, obviously. But that's basically what happened in Star Trek, except the state didn't wither away. It's just simply it happened that humanity moved into post-scarcity.
Yeah.
So in terms of your question though, on a local level about like UBI and various things, Shae, your mic.
Yeah, I know. I see. I'm trying to fix it, but I'm having problems.
All right.
Okay.
When it comes to UBI, Mark's actually made a really good point here. The problem with UBI is that when you give it, you're increasing the supply of money. The supply of money versus its demand. So for those who don't know the economics of it, supply and demand actually does affect money. That is
definitely.
why you have monetary policies, and that is also why you have inflation. Inflation is the result of when there's too much supply of money within a given population, that all the prices sort of rise up in order to absorb more of it. Whereas when there's less money, well, prices go down because there's a higher demand for said currency. Which, that's a fun thing that I usually see people not get understanding, is that what we call currency is actually very arbitrary. It's a social construct that we don't even really need. We just use it to substitute and say, roughly here, this is worth this value because I don't have something else of equivalent to trade with you.
Yeah.
So with that, the issue with UBI is that you're increasing the supply of money within a given population to the point to where prices rise up and you basically end up in the same position you were before you decided to go ahead and give everyone money.
Surely that would depend on the implementation, though.
Well, that's what I was about to get to. There are some implementation theories that I haven't quite looked at because, to me, it's not as much of a concern as it is trying to get people the actual access to the actual resource.
Yeah.
As well as getting rid of some of various what we call unnecessary hierarchies. So, I think it's Kotia actually. She is a anarchist who supports UBI. I'd have to ask her though more about that because my position on UBI is generally no. Unless you can convince me that there's a way to solve the problem of inflation. In that case, then I'm all for it. Because otherwise, you're just giving people a good time briefly, and then they end up in the same spot.
Yeah, there's so many problems with like UBI on like a functional level for in like today's society. I personally think all the bare necessities for life, whether that be food, shelter, clothing, water, all that stuff, should be free. Healthcare.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
and to me, that's not even. Yeah, and to me, that's not even an opinion. That's a moral imperative. Because a society that can't guarantee its citizens the basic necessities isn't a society that really is functional or should exist.
No.
In my opinion.
I'm going to read out Sam's comment because I tend to agree with it.
If you're worried about your property getting flooded during global climate change, just sell it to someone.
Sam in the chat has said there are studies that suggest that the outcome of a UBI is an increase in GDP because more people have security to start their own businesses instead of relying on corporations.
The problem with GDP is that it's not the best. It's not the end all be all measurement of the economy.
Oh no, I agree with you, but I'm also of the opinion that coming from a country which has good social welfare for people, that I would rather a less interventionist government in terms of forcing people to do things. Like the system you have for Social Security in Australia is that you're forced to go out and look for work, which is good. but you're also
And
forced to do that in a climate where you may not actually be any work for you to find, and if you don't achieve that, you lose that safety net, which I find
and
is ridiculous. With something like a UBI, you get that support regardless, but what you lose is that as you earn more money, you don't get as many tax benefits because you're getting the UBI anyway. So
right,
I think there's a way to balance it that you can support people, not have to police people as much, but give people a chance to put put back into society. Plus, it's working the opposite. I mean, we all know that trickle down economics doesn't work. If you give money to the rich, they just fucking hoard it because they only have
right,
to spend a small amount of their money to live. So anything on top of that is just what we put away for a rainy day, or we put into our big business, or we do something else like that. But we don't actually put it back into the local economy. Whereas if you're giving money to people who have less, they do put it back into the economy because they have to, and it stimulates the economy and keeps it going. So something like UBI would be economy stimulating as well. So
right.
there's
Problem
that
is it when
balance.
it necessarily. The problem is though is that when you break it down though and you look at it, it doesn't necessarily. That's only brief, and it may only be brief, and it's just looks good on a country for paper, but doesn't actually translate into lifting people up from poverty necessarily. Now,
Yeah.
here's the thing: I don't actually think that people should be forced to go out and look for a job.
Yeah.
I I think that like the kind of programs that I would look at, like for example, let's take the grocery store. You know, look at all that produce that goes to waste every year.
Fucking,
Wouldn't
they
it be
throw out
nice
so
if
much
we could
produce
get
where I'm at, and then they fucking pour broken bottles of like yogurt on it, so it all goes bad instead of like allowing people to like.
eat it? Yeah.
Eat it. Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice? Um, One, if your
I'm
housing was
sorry,
guaranteed,
everything's pissing me off today.
I know. I
I
think
have
that's
I have been in one of those moods for like the last like week straight. I've been doing nothing but watch like riot footage. I'm like pissed off at the police in general, watching them like fucking shoot people in the face with tear gas canisters. All
oh
those
well,
people that you see that like got shot in the face with rubber bullets. What's going on in my town? They just like brought in the fucking National Guard and they're threatening to shoot people. Um,
yep. It's dire. It really sucks to be
yeah,
in America.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's quite dreadful. I mean, um,
and all
and
because
it's
racist fucking. Mm.
well, yeah, but it's whilst it's demonstrating how racist the police force can be, and how that is, it's also demonstrating exactly what all
White
minorities have been
supremacists have been
saying.
infiltrating the police force for the longest time.
Yeah.
Like
But it's
often uh they uphold like the systemic racism that's been like plaguing our country for hundreds of years.
yeah. I'm sorry about the
There's
dog
over
barking in the
policing and
background.
like oh
It's all good.
there's over policing and like uh communities of people of color, which obviously like increases those crime rates or whatever. Less policing, less crime. Also, maybe do something about poverty because crime is heavily tied to
Crime,
like socioeconomic status.
Oh yeah.
crime is a.
Um,
I like talking about crime since I'm a criminologist, so yeah. Um, yeah. So there's this thing called social disorganization theory, which basically talks about the interplay between crime and SES status, and this is ultimately actually what. So you get like white supremacists who will say, well, blacks are more inclined to be criminal inherently, which when you break it down rationally makes no sense at all. But that used to be a theory. What we found out is that if you put white people in the same situation, if you put Jews in the same situation, if you put Mexicans in the same situation, if you put Asians in the same situation, the level of criminality is fairly much the same. What does that show us? That shows us it's a matter of socioeconomics.
yeah, crime itself, like I was saying earlier, like
Yeah,
it
I'm just
shows that there's a need not being met by society.
Yeah.
yeah, a partial need not being met by society. There are occasional rarer crimes that are white collar and all this other interesting stuff, but those are put aside and aren't particularly relevant for this discussion.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, with social disorganization theory, this was done. This was a study pretty much done by the Chicago school in the Chicago school. I think it was the University of Chicago, if I recall, where they basically went ahead and they took an ecological, they took a model from ecology and they say, oh hey, we're going to apply this to crime and see what happens. And basically, what they found out is that unstable institutions, broken families, all this other stuff are what contributes to crime, and race itself has nothing intrinsic to do with that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, except for the fact that it's the prejudice that causes people to be in lower socioeconomic levels, which is also a driver for people committing crime. Because if you have less, you may have to commit crime. As we said at the beginning, if you have less, you may have to commit crime just to survive.
I like the way my sociology teacher actually put it. Basically, the way he said it was, all right, imagine if I take everyone in the chat, I take everything from them, even their clothes, and then I just put them all in a box. They can't see outside this box, mind you. There's no light. There's absolutely nothing. Every so often, I'm going to throw them a piece of food, and what's going to happen? People are going to fight over the food.
Yeah.
People might form alliances to get the food, to share the food. All this other sort of what we call criminal behavior. All of a sudden, not only does it make sense that it happens, it becomes normative. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah, we become desensitized as a society to seeing certain things happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. I mean, we're desensitized overall to the normative violence that occurs within our society. Right,
Yeah.
Shae?
I don't know. I am an emotional person. Unfortunately, I cannot turn off the empathy. Sometimes I may not express it correctly, but media does have a tendency to desensitize us. But
it does.
I can't help but have feelings. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. The thing is that one person having feelings is good. Problem is, it's when the vast majority don't have those feelings.
And that's the problem. People individually aren't too bad. Society as a whole is the problem. It's that mob mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And
social psychology is fun.
Yeah. Although some people individually are just assholes. I mean, look at TERFs and gender criticals.
You can't cuss in Australia.
No. What he's saying is that some of our indigenous people,
Vagrant Sam says our indigenous.
Yeah.
Our indigenous people are more likely to be arrested for swearing.
Yeah. What he's saying is, if you're an Aboriginal person and a cop asks you something and you swore at the cop, the chances are you will be arrested just for swearing at them.
Yep.
Yeah, and yet a white person can do the same thing, and it's not until they're actually physical that they'd get arrested. There's definitely systemic racism within Australia, as the same as there is anywhere else. But I think we're further along in getting to better outcomes, perhaps, than you guys are, and some of that is because some of the problems Calon mentioned about if people kicked out the police force in one area, they can go to another area because they don't have. Well, no, that doesn't work because all our police force are employed by the particular state that you are in, and there's records kept to these people. If they lose their job as a cop because they fucked up badly, they won't get a job anywhere else in Australia as a cop. That's it. They're done. So you're less likely to have those same issues, but we still have corruption within the police. You still have bigotry there. And you certainly have these inner levels of systemic racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia that exists within those organizations. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's not a non-transphobic country in existence when you think about it.
Well, let's go to the worst at the moment. Hungary.
Hungary's not the worst, but
I don't know. They've literally just outlawed people being trans.
Oh, did they? How do they do that now?
They've made it illegal to offer any medical support to a trans person. You are not allowed to be openly trans in public in certain cities. You're also not allowed to be openly gay in certain cities. You can go to prison for this.
Yeah,
Where?
because their government
Hungary.
was taken over by a
Oh
Nazi.
fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to cover that soon on Transcarter. Like Let Rune has been like protesting there, and I feel like we need to signal boost that struggle.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
This is a dreadful situation, and unfortunately, I can see parallels in the way that they've gone in Hungary to some of the stuff that you guys are getting from the Trump administration. You know that
yeah,
encouragement.
they did just make it like. Sorry, they did just make it like legal for doctors to refuse treating you just on the basis of your gender. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
It pulled back a lot of Obama era protections. Shelters now can like kick you out just for being trans. Like there so much the military thing, but like on a side note, like I'm kind of glad I never wanted to be in the military, and I'm glad I can't be picked for a draft now, so that's kind of nice. But like,
yeah, I'm the same. I'm a pacifist, so I couldn't fight. I mean, I could fight to defend myself, and that's it. That's about it.
I'm a pacifist up to the point of self-defense.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a Viking.
I love you, Calon.
Everyone else, I'm a pacifist. Me, I'm a Viking.
Yeah.
I
Where's my
basically said I
axe?
wasn't
Says
really
Calon.
a
I am good.
pacifist, but-
Yeah, so you're an axe maiden.
Shield Maiden, yeah.
A shield maiden. Sorry, yes, shield maiden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm sure you've got an axe there somewhere.
It's around here. Axe and a sword, you gotta be prepared.
Yeah.
When the revolution starts, and people.
And it
really
looks like
start
it's starting.
you just gotta Viking sometimes.
You do.
You have to, as the Norse would say, fari vikinga, which means to go Viking. Literally, that's how they would describe it. They would say, "Oh yeah, he went Viking."
So, yeah, but you guys have some of the states where the states have actually tried to ban doctors helping trans kids, and we're not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people when they talk about trans kids go, "Oh, we're going to just medicate them and give them surgery before they even hit puberty." I mean, it's a ridiculous argument because no one does that in the whole world.
Not even how it works.
No,
Like,
it's not.
These
Jen,
people
you're
are...
ruining the trans plan here. Did you not get the pamphlet from the Illuminati?
Yeah, we have to trans them young
You-
and give them surgery at 10. Yeah.
Wait, you haven't been
I
getting your
shouldn't have
George
said that
Soros
out loud.
money?
Some turf's gonna cut that and play.
You're not... Wait,
Probably.
Jen, you're not getting your George Soros check?
What? There's checks? Damn it!
Yes. This is the trans agenda.
I mean, it's just it really is crazy.
You
That
know,
these people
George
think
Soros
that-
obviously funds any like leftist like movement. Like, of course the money's coming from him. I get my checks every week. Why aren't you getting yours?
It's Australia. We're so far away. The mail's delayed.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
here's
they
the
are
thing,
mail
you
after
guys
all. I
don't-
mean.
All right, Jen. We know Australia doesn't actually exist, and you're just Americans working for NASA. Okay.
Shh, 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 shh. No, don't tell them.
So you should.
We've got to keep fighting these absolutely correct flat earthers.
Exactly. So yeah, no, yeah. So
We have totally derailed this
You're back.
conversation. somebody take it in a good new direction, or continue in the original direction, whichever.
What were we talking about?
I think we were moving on to trans issues because I think we've done the riots.
Yeah, we talked about the
For-
protests, but like they're peaceful protests for the most part.
They are.
People are singling out the riots as a way to discredit the movement.
Yes, and and to say that the Black Lives Matter movement is a terrorist organization just absolutely pisses me off. Yeah, there are people who have the
I
wrong
will
ideas
never
who get
understand.
involved, but no, that's not what it is.
I will never understand what it's like, fucking fearing for my life every time I get pulled over by a police officer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at
Yep.
the same time, like, these people's
And
struggle
yet-
definitely needs to be heard. 9 fucking minutes these police officers were on George Floyd's, like, fucking
Hey,
neck.
Shae, why don't you tell us about your experience with police and the homeless?
Yes.
I don't know if I'm really allowed to talk about all of that.
No, you could just talk about in general. Like, let's just say
Okay.
you're walking down the street. This is hypothetical. You're walking down the street and you see a homeless camp, and then you see police. What usually happens?
Oh god, so the Phoenix police force is really, really fucked up. Like, this was before, like, all the protests started happening. Like, but they've been in full riot gear since, like, day fucking one, right?
Oh,
So,
you're right.
there is this tent city here in Phoenix that we call the Zone. And I've been working with, like, some of the shelterless community out there for a little while. Every Wednesday, they would have sweeps where they would force all of the homeless people to pick up all of their belongings, move it to a different street so they can, like, clean or whatever. And then after they were done, cleaning, they would go and have to move all of their stuff back. They had, like, set time limits before they can do this. If you didn't, they would straight up bulldoze your stuff. I got tons of of these, like, occasions on camera. Like, maybe somebody had to go to court, so they couldn't, like, move their tent. They didn't, set it up with somebody beforehand. They get there last minute. All their stuff is gone. They had a bed to sleep on. They had, like, blankets. They had a shelter in the form of a tent. All of it. Everything you own, and it's basically nothing anyway, is taken from you. Every single week this happens to somebody out there. Not only that, they write tickets to people for walking on the street while they're doing this all at the same time. Yeah. They're real big on filling
Ticket quotas.
ticket quotas, but, like, they're not officially there. But, like, Jack Ducey, of course, fucking doesn't outlaw them statewide, despite the fact that the bills came to his desk multiple times. They're forcing everybody, like, there not to, I mean, on just regular days of the week for a while, they were forcing people to pull their tents down. Not move them or anything, but, like, you would risk citations if you didn't, like, pull your tent down, which kind of sucks because, like, the community out there, like, built themselves, like, sanitary as possible, like, bathrooms with, like, these, like, makeshift, like, hand washing stations because the city won't provide, like, porta potties or, like, anywhere for people to wash their hands. So they take away their bathrooms from them that they built for themselves by instilling, like, this practice. And at the same time, like, they're still, just for walking across the street in, like, a dead area where there's basically no traffic except police and, like, maybe the people that come out to give, like, food and stuff, they're getting ticketed for obstructing a highway. It's not even a fucking highway. It turns out there was a huge gentrification project that was, like, starting out there. And a lot of the business owners started, like, petitioning the city to, like, displace everybody. Recently, they did displace most of the people. There's still a large chunk of them at, like, farther ends of, like, this, like, little area. But one of the ways that they did this peacefully is they put them in these two, like, lots. Phoenix is really hot, right? we
Like
we
scorching.
get like 120 we get like 120-degree weather out here, and what that translates to, of course, is like scorching hot surface temperatures on like, you know, solid concrete. It'll go above like 160 degrees at times. All that heat, of course, is going to radiate back into the tent, and then it's just going to fucking, you know, get all trapped in the tent. So like even their shelters are going to be like extremely hot. None of these areas are shaded at all. They didn't provide any infrastructure. It's just a fenced off area that has 24-hour security, which sounds good, but it's actually not if you think about it. And fucking barbed wire. These little places that they made look like fucking jails more than anything, and they're constantly being policed. And they weren't taking any of the social distancing precautions. The only people that were allowed to be in there were over the age of 55. So like they're putting the most vulnerable population at risk of like heat stroke in these like gated areas. Fuck, there's so much.
So much wrong.
Yeah, no, like I can go on about this for hours. Like one of the property owners, like I have a video of them like opening a fire hydrant, which I'm pretty sure is illegal for citizens to do, to wet this area of his property. Somebody comes by, asks if they can fill up their buckets. He turns it on. It's like slow at first, but then as she like puts her bucket out there, he puts it on full power. She can't like hold her bucket against like the water pressure. A bunch of other people come and walk by, and they're trying to fill up their water bottles. They instantly lose it because the water pressure is so great. And he's just like standing there, like basically laughing.
See, in my mind, for a civilized society, why can't we have emergency housing for these people? And I don't mean emergency housing that's going to be there for a few weeks. I mean,
because the city does the barest minimum in order to say that they did something at all.
Not only
and
that,
yet,
but when,
we helped out.
not only that, not only that, but when they do actually get emergency housing, the emergency housing usually involves roaches falling down from the ceilings.
Yeah, well, that's true. But I mean, the cost to the city
there was
of
plenty
maintaining
of empty,
these
like
people.
fucking hotels.
The
So there's
cost
plenty of like empty like fucking hotels. They could have used some of that city money that they got to fucking house these people for a few months.
even if
COVID
you
was
built
going on.
structures.
Completely doable. They've done it in plenty of cities across the U.S. Phoenix is a pretty rich city, and they refuse to do that.
If
Bare
you-
minimum, just so they look good to the media.
If you built a facility that was like mini hotels, even if you start it in the style of Japanese, where every person was assigned a small room, basically, with enough room for a bed, a small, tiny little mini kitchen area, and their own toilet. They don't even have to have their own shower. It can be communal showers. You know, so that there's a showering facility within that, but there's individual toilets, right? Singular room. That's still better than living in a tent. It gives somebody dignity. And the cost to the city compared to having to do this constant cleaning to try and make the city look nicer, and the extra police force you have to, and the extra crime you're going to end up with because you've got people on the streets, that long-term cost to the community is higher than providing housing for these people. I have this big problem with governments in that governments tend to think about what can we do that's going to be good for us in the next 4 years so we can get elected again, instead of what's good for the community as a whole over the next 100 years. And this is why we have things like climate denial and climate change denial, and we have people who don't give a fuck about trans people or minorities or whatever else, because they're always thinking the short term and what they can get out of it instead of what long term is best for society as a whole. And that pisses me off. Sorry. Rant over.
Not to mention that the shelterless community that I've been working with is like large majority like people of color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should be
And
running.
so, yeah.
We should be running our countries. That's what it is.
Yeah. But yeah, those are like
Horizontal structure.
Yeah.
Shae. We're not getting that deep into theory right now. Um, yeah, but yeah, no, that's yeah, homelessness and how they. Oh, what are those things? Like they'll put spikes on the roads to prevent or not the roads, the sidewalks to prevent homeless people from being there.
Hostile architecture.
Yeah,
I do not condone or condemn you graffitiing hostile architecture or breaking it down.
I'm gonna let you, Shae, tell us about that.
What?
Hostile architecture. Can't assume everyone knows about it.
People don't know about hostile architecture? Okay, so hostile architecture is some shit. It is not okay. Basically, what they're doing is they're trying to make like being homeless, like a crime, which is fucked. Like, not everybody has shelter over their heads. Some people need to sleep, right? So they'll put like spikes and stuff on like park benches, or they'll
Heaters.
sometimes it's not even sparks. Sometimes it's like a bar, like a armrest that not didn't used to be on this bench, but they just randomly placed it. And the reason why they'll do that is, of course, so that homeless people can't like
Can't
sleep
lie.
there. You'll see these at like parks, like a lot of the time.
Well, they're starting to build
But
park benches that are basically just pipes that you sit on, rather than an actual seat, because you can't sleep on a pipe. So
you can find a way.
that's the voice of experience there.
But no, like there's like these pictures that I've seen where like so obviously like it rains, right? Like everybody knows it rains. And
No, it
sometimes
doesn't.
like shelterless people will seek shelter from the rain under bridges. But then all of a sudden the city will put like tons of spikes on any of like the sitting areas that would have been under these bridges, like where they're, safe away from like traffic and stuff. So like you can't set your shit down, you can't sit anywhere, you can't like lay down, and you are stuck in the rain. Like it's basically just a way to kick shelterless people
Didn't
like
they
while they're on the ground.
in one of the cities they built like open
And I
grates
haven't even
along the
started
path?
talking about bird noise machines.
Well, interesting that you mentioned that. There was this study done that there's a frequency of sound that you can only hear when you're younger, and it's really really freaking annoying to younger people. And as you get older, you can no longer hear it. And they were going to put trials in the UK where certain shops were going to be playing this noise all the time to discourage young people from entering those stores. So there's your hostile architecture that isn't even visible. It's a form of sound control over people, and it's like, who thinks that this is a good idea?
Here. They've been doing something similar here in Phoenix as well, where they'll have these bird noise making machines. They're sold under the guise that they keep like pigeons and stuff away from your building, because all it does is play really loud, like predatory bird noises. However, how they're used in practice is to annoy the shit out of like the shelterless community and prevent them from sleeping on your property. The problem with these machines is that they're so loud they can cover like a fucking acre of land, and you can still hear it, like as if it was right fucking next to you.
So if anyone actually owned a house anywhere near there, they can't sleep in it either. So
no, they have them all posted around like the area that I was working into.
And that's noise fucking pollution.
All day,
why should
every
everyone
30
have to
seconds.
Why should anyone have to put up with that? I mean,
because capital.
Let alone the homeless people, the rest of us. Fuck off with that for an idea.
It's because just like how the United States Police Force doesn't treat like black people like they're human beings, cities often don't treat their shelterless people like they're human beings either.
It's almost like there's an intersection here of privilege versus underprivilege, isn't there?
Isn't it? And I mean, and I'm going to bring it back to us because you guys do run a support channel for trans people, and all three of us are trans. So let's bring it back to us because we're not self-indulgent at all.
Honestly, I love these conversations, though. I understand
so do I.
I'm a
I've
little
been
heated after
thoroughly
everything
enjoying
going
this.
on here. It's a little self-inflicted. I'm not gonna lie. I tend to get hyper focused on things, and right now I'm hyper focused on like police brutality. So
No, I get you, but I mean that
anyways.
exists for trans people as well. I mean,
yeah, no, Tony McDade.
yeah,
Tony McDade doesn't get brought up as much as like he probably should be. But he was a black trans man who just like this month got fucking murdered by police
because they thought he was a criminal.
Yeah, they thought he was a criminal. He was profiled just based on skin color, basically. The cop that shot him said, "Don't move." Racial slur.
Yeah.
And fucking shot him while he was laying there.
No, to be fair, he wasn't shot because he was
the
trans.
media comes out.
He wasn't shot because he was trans. He was shot because he was black.
Well, that's where intersectionality.
So in the United States, that actually is a little bit of a curious phenomenon because they tend to portray us as predators.
Yes.
So it might actually have been. So the way I would actually look at that is he was shot because he was both.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at with my intersectional like comment earlier. Like,
yeah,
not only are you likely to get more violent reactions from police officers for being black, you're also more likely to get violent reactions from police for being trans.
Oh, definitely.
Like, it doesn't matter if like, probably more so as a trans woman, but like still
definitely trans
there with like as a trans man. And
well, it depends. There's this privilege element with being trans as well, because the more you fit into society's perceived notion of what being a woman is, the less likely you are to cop that.
So
that hatred.
Passing privilege.
Passing privilege, yes. And I hate the term passing. Yeah. I really hate it.
I hate it as well, but unfortunately,
it shouldn't.
It's a social phenomenon.
A thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we all understand how this is. I mean, I lived as stealth for a really long time, so... and I understand the complete difference between when somebody knows you're trans and when they don't. And the fact that I've had conversations with people where they have gone on diatribe about trans people right in front of my face, not realizing I was trans, and then I go, you realize you just spent 20 minutes fucking insulting me. And then, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything. Yeah, you fucking did.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's like, no, don't just say sorry to me because you happen to know me, you happen to like me, but you didn't realize I was trans. Be fucking sorry that you're a bigoted prick.
Exactly.
Try and do something about your attitude and change it, because regardless of your personal feelings of trans women or trans men and men, we are all human beings. Treat people with dignity and respect.
Unless apparently they're black or trans or any of these other minority groups. In which case, society is fucked up. It's a fucking mess.
Oh, hell yeah.
I know this because I study it.
It needs to be rebuilt from the ground up.
Yeah.
So what about the ridiculousness of the gender critical movement? Do we feel brave?
Like, just the idea that, like, boys are somehow more naturally attracted to trucks automatically is, like, confusing when you actually know the science. It's like, what?
The hilarious thing about the gender criticals is how self-contradictory they are. They go on about, oh, you can't just be a woman because you like this, this, and this, and this, and this, and yet now you're defining what a woman is.
Yeah.
So you're using your social conventions to define what you think a woman is. It's not about biology at this point, and then you're going to tell other people that they're not allowed to define themselves as a woman. You know.
Yeah, apparently.
And it's not even about that. I mean, trans people have the science to back us up anyway. But even if we didn't,
on a purely, like, Yeah, on like a purely philosophical level, when you look at it, even without like, let's say I just cut all the scientific research and whatnot away,
Yeah,
on a purely philosophical level, gender critical, gender, what's the term? Gender critical, idiots. I'll just call them that.
yeah, because you're
She's
removing people's basic humanity by saying you
yeah,
cannot be, and you're making arguments, but with no facts behind them. You know, the arguments of trans people in toilets are the same arguments that were made about gay people in toilets, and they're not factual. That it's just
almost like a
it's bullshit.
matter,
I finally got the
almost like with
courage to
all
start
these
using
things.
the women's restroom at work.
What?
Yay.
Only just. Oh, well done, Shae. But
Yeah,
I
okay.
honestly,
It takes a lot for me to like. I don't know. I didn't come out like at work like right away, so that was like a thing. Like a thing about that is like if you're a trans person, you're less likely to get hired by businesses if you're presenting, you know, not as what people perceive you as. So like I always like stroll in there, all looking all nice, all masculine. I got like a one of those like
You mean
collared
no,
button
Shae?
shirts.
how the
I'll
hell do you
use my
manage looking
dead name.
masculine?
Well,
Shae, you're not masculine.
Sorry,
maybe
sorry,
not,
hon, you're not.
but I know how my voice sounds. I know how my voice sounds, and honestly, like, if I'm not at like an angle, I got like box face, and I see myself like like I did like maybe a
Shae,
year
your
ago.
voice sounds fine.
Your voice
No,
sounds
it
fine,
doesn't.
hon.
I need training. I've been having a weird thing about that lately too. Yay, dysphoria. Okay,
Yeah,
Let's
dysphoria is
not-
great.
Dysphoria is the
not
bitch
fun.
that kicks your ass and then once you fall over, kicks you in the face.
Mhm. But yeah. Speaking of bathrooms, when I was using like the male restroom because I was still too scared to go in the women's, I got laughed at multiple times. Like you're more likely as like a trans woman to get harassed going into like the male restroom than you are going into the female restroom.
Oh, not
This
only
is
that,
true.
not just
The women's
harassed,
restroom.
you're more likely to suffer physical violence for it. And that's even if
Yeah,
you're
that
not
too.
trying to pass. That's even if you were not trying to pass. If you're trying to pass as a male and you're a trans woman just so you can hide, you're still more likely to cop violence in there if somebody figures out that you're a trans woman. And less likely than if somebody figures out you're a trans woman and you go in the women's toilets, because there's a lot less fucking assholes that are gender critical in the world who would actually beat up on a trans person than there are genuine people who go, hey, that's a trans woman and she's probably more scared of us than we are of her. Which is the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality
Luckily,
is...
most of my coworkers are actually really accepting. There's a couple of the main management that's kind of yanksy, but
Yeah.
like it's probably like the most diverse like place I've ever worked at. I didn't know it was like that at first. I was like hella scared.
And yet you could have
Yep.
started your new job as Shae.
I didn't.
You should have.
Probably. But like I wanted to actually get hired.
Yeah, so
Gotta
in
make
the
sure
US,
there's a roof over my head. And I have
So the
food
thing in
to
the
eat.
US that a lot of people might not realize if they're not from here is that we have what are called at-will states. Have you heard that term?
No.
Do you know what at will is?
At-will.
No, I don't. You have to explain it.
Sometimes they're called
At-will
right to work
means-
states.
Right
Which
to work.
is a misnomer, actually. What it basically means is that like your boss can fire you at any time for any reason
Oh, that's
without
fucked up.
notice.
See, we don't have that.
You
Yeah.
could also quit for any. You could also quit anytime for any reason without notice. But like, really, it's just so a way like your employers can strong arm you into not paying unemployment, and you
Yeah.
know get rid of you if they're a part of a marginalized group, and also so they can strong arm you into not paying unemployment.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, both Shae and I are in. Fun fact: both Shae and I are in right to work states.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, that's another level of oppression that gets put on us here.
But it's
There's so
under the
much
guise that
oppression
it's
going
the same
on.
for everybody. But the fact is that when you have a policy that's can be used discriminatory, my mouth won't work. You guys know what the word was? Discriminatorily.
It's
Yeah,
legal discrimination that
it's legal
allows
discrimination.
you to put a smokescreen over the real reason why somebody is fired.
And as soon as you have a thing that can be used in that way, it's always minorities that will suffer from it. Always. So it'll be your people of
Yeah, because
color. It's
everyone
going to
hates
be
us.
women, and it's going to be anyone who's LGBT. We are the people who are going to cop it first. I mean, if you're a trans woman or a trans man, you're gonna cop shit no matter what you do, no matter how well you pass. There's always going to be a point. The thing about people who pass is that even if you do have good passing privilege, there's always going to be that one time where you say something wrong, or you're with the wrong group of people, or something like that, and you're going to get picked up on. That you, even if the person who thinks you're trans isn't sure, it won't matter to them because people who are bigoted will be bigoted towards somebody who is cis just on the thing that they think they might be trans.
Yep.
So
Gender policing is a thing.
gender policing is the thing. This is the worst thing about the gender criticals. They are quite happy because there are a lot of cis women who actually don't have passing privilege as women. That's a horrible thing to say, but because passing privilege seems to be a thing in our society, there are cis women who don't have passing privilege. And those women cop it just as much for the gender critical crowd, and the gender critical crowd don't care. They are considered acceptable casualties of their war against trans people. And that's fucking disgusting.
Yep.
And just goes
I
to
guess
show
they
that
need
they
us
don't
more.
care
That's the
about
whole
women.
thing.
Sorry, Calon, I talked over you.
Well, I said that's the thing, and that's what's the weirdest part about all these gender critical nonsense.
I usually
Is
just
that
call them
it's so
turfs.
unnecessary.
Turfs, yeah.
Yeah,
They
fuck
chose
turfs.
gender critical, so they can't complain if we call them that. As far as I'm concerned, they're gender critical fuckwits. So,
Can we just call them?
I like turfs.
Bigots, because they're all bigots.
Yeah, that works too. Turfs, bigots.
How about just idiots?
Those are synonyms, aren't they? I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure
turfs.
those two words mean
See,
exactly
I have a
the
problem
same
with the
thing.
term turf because they're trying to claim that they're feminists, and to my mind, they're not. If you're prepared to isolate any group of women, you lose the right
Call them
to call
farts.
yourself a feminist.
Feminist appropriating radical transphobe.
Yeah, fart works, but that they're not. I mean, because the underlying ideology means that you're prepared to throw. Even if I grant to them that they're only excluding trans women, so they're only excluding the people they consider to be male, they are still anti-woman because there are so many cis women they're prepared to throw under the bus to hurt trans women. So then you're still anti-woman. I'm sorry, you're not supporting women if you're a TERF. There is no way you can claim you're supporting women if you're a TERF. You're just supporting your own bigotry, that's all.
Pretty much. Well, it's not just your own bigotry that you're supporting, but ultimately, and this is what the insight that them going after women, cis women, for not passing, basically what it all amounts to is body policing.
Oh, and ultimately supporting the patriarchy,
And not
which is
holding...
entirely the opposite to being feminist.
Right, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole hypocritical thing about them, is that ultimately they are trying to enforce male standards of beauty.
Yes.
That is what they're trying to do.
Never saw it that way. Really eye-opening.
Hadn't you really, Shae?
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way.
No, it is exactly what they do. If you would have spent time.
I always boiled it down to like I've always boiled it down to like biological essentialism, really, and that these people just
there's certainly
know
an element
fucking
to
nothing
that.
about like sex being like a spectrum, a bimodal distribution of like both primary and secondary sex characteristics.
Yeah.
Things like HRT can actually like move where you are on that distribution. Like people don't understand that for whatever reason. And even
That's because
then,
people
like, there's
don't
an element to
understand the
sex
difference.
that's like entirely socially constructed, and like honestly, it shouldn't matter how people look.
Because most people don't
Right,
understand
but that's
math.
the theology. Like, I've always looked at it as like more of science denialism versus like sticking up for the patriarchy. But all of that can be valid at the same time. So now I have
Yes, it
another
can.
perspective.
And I mean, the whole thing of them not understanding about sex being a bimodal distribution is a misunderstanding of the math of it. You know, bimodal distribution is not the same thing as a binary. A binary is just this or this, and distribution is never just that or that. There's always areas of grey. Okay, when you're talking about sex from the
Bimodal
point of
sex
view
has
of
2 feet.
reproduction, yes, it's not even a bimodal distribution when you're talking about sex in terms of reproduction. When you're talking about what most biologists
Even
refer
then,
to
it
as
is.
biological sex, yeah, we only
Even then,
have.
it's like a bimodal distribution.
Well, no, it's not. 'Cause
Like
you still
people
only
with
have
like
two sides of that. But that aside, that isn't the only categorizing element of
no, people can
somebody's
be born
sex.
with like people can be born with like a penis, like and a vagina.
Yes,
Sometimes they
people can
born
be.
with, like,
There
a
are a
fully
handful of
functioning
people.
dick and ovaries.
Yeah,
like,
so there are people
intersex
who are
idea is
born
kinda
with
like
one of each, or ovestums and stuff like that. But there is still only two. Despite those differences, there are still only two possible gametes that can produce, and where that's the whole. But that's the actual definition of that descriptor for sex. So yes, that is a binary, but the rest of the sex descriptors are not binary.
There are people that even produce both gametes.
Yes,
somehow,
but there's still only the two. That's the point, and that's how it's defined as that. So those people don't fit in the binary, but they are outliers. It's not a distribution in that sense.
That's why it's a bimodal distribution, though.
But
Because anybody that like doesn't meet those 2 points of like, you know, like this is where like most people.
but
fall
in
under
statistical
the bimodal
analysis, you
distribution,
would
and these
drop
other people-
those rare points. That's the point of it, because that's how you do statistical
but, like-
analysis. But that's beside the point. The point I was trying to make was
There's enough of these quote unquote outliers to create a bimodal distribution.
But even if you
And I put outliers out there because like these people exist, and that's the whole reason.
Oh,
why,
they
like,
definitely
the
do.
bimodal distribution, like,
but even if you
is like
accept
valid in the first place.
even if you accept from the definition of biological sex that there is only two biological sexes because there's only two gametes, you're totally ignoring the fact that sex is not purely defined on gametes. It isn't.
True.
And that's the whole bit that they ignore. They go, oh, biological sex, biological sex, biological sex. Fuck off. It's not all about biological sex. You weren't even giving your sex at birth based on what gametes you fucking have. Some doctor held you up, looked between your legs and said, boy or girl. And that was it.
By the way, just in case something I said gets misconstrued later, like trans people that choose not to, or for whatever reason can't, like medically transition, are still as valid and as beautiful as the people that do.
Yeah, 100%.
So I'm just gonna throw that out there. Like some people choose not to medically transition, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
They're still the gender that they identify with.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I know.
But we're
Sounds
not
like a
actually
big
talking about
platitude,
gender
but,
now.
like,
We're actually talking about
I feel
sex.
like that message needs to. I feel like that just needs to get thrown out there.
No,
Especially when I'm talking about how HRT can like move you along that spectrum.
but we're not. With that spectrum you're talking about, there isn't gender. That spectrum that you're talking about now
I know.
is sex. So
HRT moves you along that spectrum, though.
the sex spectrum, yes. And it is definitely a spectrum. Because more than one thing describes what somebody's sex is. You've got your phenotype, so the hormones make an enormous difference to your phenotype. You've got
That's why I have fat on my cheekbones now.
you've got your brain development, which causes
Shae, you have cheekbones.
which
have fat
affects
here
how
now.
your brain maps your self-image of your body to you, and that's part of your physical sex. You've got your chromosomes. There's a whole heap of other ones. I think there's 7 different categorizing terms that are generally used to define sex. They're outside of biologists. who are just fucking narrow-minded. Most of them, no, not most of them. Enough of them are narrow-minded enough that it causes problems in other areas. When you have people like Fonda Beatles, who's just so narrowly run down a particular tunnel that she can't see the oncoming fucking train, is just blows my mind.
That's why biologists need a course in philosophy.
Why can't biologists go and spend a couple of semesters doing actual studying medicine as well?
Yeah,
so that
understand
you know
why,
that there's more
scientists
than
don't
just
understand
this.
that the scientific method is inherently philosophical concept, like, to begin with. Like, science is like whole base is under philosophy.
Yeah, what they need to do is really, honestly, and this is my criticism, especially of the so quote unquote hard sciences, is that sciences should also require extensive work with philosophy as a subject on its own, because a lot of scientists don't know how to really like form an argument outside of their field and whatnot.
Yeah. Well, yeah, some of that actually comes back to critical thinking. I mean, these people call themselves gender criticals, but I don't think they've ever taken a class in learning critical thinking. They're
I doubt so as well, because like even if I wanted to somehow doubt that
Estrogen
gender
only
was,
gets you
say,
to Tanner stage 3. Hello, progesterone.
Exactly, yeah. But like, I mean, when it comes to like gender critical stuff, like, there's not like, you just spend 2 seconds and you see that it's nonsense if you spent any time actually thinking about it. Hello?
Yeah, but a lot of this
Still
is
here.
their fear. For some of them, it is a fear. They've listened to the rhetoric that's been pushed, usually by the religious right, and they go, oh, those transes in the toilets are going to get us, which is just absolutely crazy.
By the way, those are all rehashed like arguments that were used against like gay and lesbian people.
Gay and lesbian people. Yep.
I'm
Yeah, all
pretty sure
the
those were the
arguments
same-
of the gender
Can't let
critical
the-
are basically that.
Can't let
Sorry.
the gays in the bathroom. They're gonna.
Can't have the gays in the military. Can't have the gays in the bathroom. We don't want the gays near our
arguments.
children. You know, it's the
It's
same
all
stuff.
The same arguments, except like the target has changed.
Well, it had to, because they already lost that war. So when the religious right realized that they'd lost ground and they weren't winning the war against gays and lesbians and bi people, they
could have
stepped
been a little
backwards
more
and said,
creative and
let's
tried to
fuck
find
over the
all these
trans
different
people.
Arguments, though, you know,
Sorry?
like, why rehash the same arguments? Come up
Because
with
they
some
don't
better
have
ones.
any decent arguments. Well, I mean, what actual argument?
Yeah, and they also only have one joke. But like, I understand they're not creative, they're not funny people. But like, fucking try harder, okay? Like, I'll have fun dunking on you as long as you exist, but make it more fun, okay?
Yeah.
The thing is, Shae, the thing is that the rhetoric that they use has literally been used for every single minority group throughout history. During segregation.
Oh yeah, I know.
I guarantee you go back and you look, you can find the same thing. Oh, we can't let black people into white bathrooms. They'll assault white women.
It is the same thing. Well, Godless
Just
Granny
rehash
asks a good
arguments for a
question.
different marginalized
When
group.
they eventually lose the battle against trans people, where will they go next? Is it going to be people who are ace, or are they going to look
Right
for
now,
other
it's probably-
letters in LGBT?
Yeah,
It would be hilarious
non-binary
if
people don't get enough
they tried to go-
enough like non-binary people like experience probably like the most like transphobia out of everyone, and like if the binaries ever get accepted, a lot of that's going to shift towards them. Like
Yeah,
it already
definitely.
is, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, most of it is aimed at them, because it's harder to aim it at people who are binary trans than it is to at non-binary people. Because I mean,
Yeah, no, like non-binary people have got it like a lot worse. That's what I'm trying to say.
yeah, very definitely. No, 100% agree with you there.
Yeah, but like if there's ever like full on like binary trans acceptance, then like
It'll
They're-
be the non-binary. Yeah.
That would be like the next one, I guess.
Yeah, it's like they lost issues for gays and lesbians, so they spent ages concentrating on gay marriage as their next battleground. So it'll move back. That it's not trans people in general; it's non-binary people that we're fighting against.
There's a lot of people on Twitter that are also like arguing against like bi and pan lesbians because they don't have any idea what the split attraction model is and how it validates those identities.
Yeah. But they also
Which,
don't
by
have
the
any
way,
idea that attraction is different to
asexual academic.
identity.
I'm sorry?
They also have, some of them have no idea that sexual attraction is not the same as your gender identity.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about gender identity. I was talking about like
Yeah.
sexuality and romantic like
Yeah.
preferences.
Yep.
Because we went from like gender criticals to then like I thought I was on track, okay?
Shae, you're always on track.
Sometimes.
We've covered a lot of topics so far.
All we have
Yeah,
to
it's
do
been-
is pull
it's been
Angelica
fun.
in here, and she'll get you back on track.
Sorry, what track are you wanting, Calon?
I said, all we have to do is pull Angelica in here, and Shae will get right back on track.
Oh, okay.
No, then I'll just be sitting here doing gay as fuck things with Angelica. It's like usually how it happens.
Nothing wrong with that.
I mean, that's
And if
the
you pull
whole
in-
point, isn't
If we
it?
pull in Duck here, then I'll just be like fawning over him the entire time. So like either way, you're just giving me a distraction.
Distractions
Those
are
will
fine.
help me.
Look, so long as it upsets homophobes, I don't care. It's all about getting the homophobes angry.
Well, because then they show
And the
themselves to be
transphobe.
exactly what they are, don't they? So-
Exactly. We're just helping to show their authentic selves.
Mhm. Now I miss Duck.
I know you do. You always miss him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a room anymore.
What?
so now
Yes, I know. Shae.
so now I don't think he could like spend the night.
You don't have a room?
No, I've been renting a couch, but like somebody moved out a while ago. There was somebody else in line for the room already, and they just moved in. So like I was sleeping there for like a few weeks,
Oh, okay.
and I'm back
So-
on the couch.
So you're back on the couch.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah,
house, though.
unfortunate.
I was like had enough money for an apartment or whatever, then COVID hit, and then I got to start over again.
It's going to take you
Also,
a
I got
while.
laid off from my job because of COVID. Yeah. 20 hours.
Yeah, by
a
the way,
week.
COVID is really racist because it's really been targeting people of ethnic backgrounds.
True.
Did you guys
I mean,
love
people
the fact
think
that the gender crits went down the whole avenue of the COVID proves the real differences between trans women and cis women, because trans women are more susceptible to COVID because of their male biology, and then it all comes out
That's
that the
actually fucking ridiculous
That-
because they were giving cis men estrogen to treat their COVID.
exactly it showed that it was estrogen that was the big thing, so we were exactly the same as them. In fact, maybe a little bit better than some of them because we have more consistent estrogen.
True.
Yep.
And then they started complaining about trans women using up all the estrogen again.
Exactly.
All the E for me.
All the E for me.
Nobody else.
Yeah, you transes can't have our estrogens because we needs it because we don't like our hotted flushes. It's like, fuck off.
Well, the thing is yeah.
I never had hot flashes. Is
I
how those
have.
supposed to like possibly happen? Like when you like first start? Did
It can. It's more likely when you're post-operative, but I had them anyway. But I also had periods as a teenager, so who am I to gauge what trans people should go through?
All right, so now we get to talk about our huge secret trans agenda.
Oh, we have one.
Yes,
Cool.
There are these
I,
special
I,
frogs
talk
that
about
don't-
Transtarter. We have not talked about the channel at all.
yeah, let's talk about your
Huh?
channel. What? Let's
Well,
tell
first we need to
everybody
talk
what
about
you do.
the super secret trans plot. The secret trans plot is that we get these frogs called Alexius Joneses, and what they do is they turn people trans.
Oh,
That's actually how I turn trans.
the more people we
I
turn
said
trans,
Shae
the
to
better.
Alexius Joneses.
They spit some acid in my face, and then I'm like, ooh, woo, I'm a girl, yeah.
Now, if
I'm
all
just
the
kidding.
world was
Exactly.
LGBT, wouldn't it be a nicer world?
Probably.
Ah.
But
Probably.
And we would have less
The actual
overpopulation because
secret-
less of us would be breeders. So there's
So-
that.
if you guys didn't catch on to that, Calon was actually just joking. There are no Alexis Jonesius frogs out there, and no acid.
Alexius Joneseus.
And acid did
No,
not turn me
Alexius
trans.
Jones Johnsons.
But the real secret trans agenda, of course, all lies on a channel called Transgarter, which is focused on community building and creating a support group for trans and other GRSM folks within like the atheist and pagan communities, respectively. As you probably know, Jen, because you've ran into it yourself, the atheist community as a whole, I'm not going to say that there isn't like pockets there that are like great for trans and GRSM folks. However, like there are a lot of places where it's like very unsafe. And since Callan and I both have like some influence in those communities, we thought it would be a great idea to create a space for people to hang out, support each other, have access to resources if they need them, and help each other out like during like hard times and stuff. I have weird plans for the channel in the future. I would like to think that like once we get like monetized or have like some money coming in, we can give it back to the community in some way. Callan is like, no.
Or we can get Shae an apartment.
I'd rather give it back to the community in some way. But that's my idea for it. We
Not that
raise just like you're doing here actually. We have a big part of our channel currently right now in like the beginning stages is like raising trans voices up. We've had an interview with Christy Abbey and Ozma the Dark, both from a channel called Fluid Voice, which has a lot of the same goals as us. And we've also interviewed a friend of the channel, Aaliyah Kai, who is gender fluid and also polyamorous. Our most viewed interview so far, honestly. It was so much fun having Aaliyah Kai on.
Yeah,
So,
that's why
we're
in the
trying-
server we just call. That's why in the server I just called her Polly because she's poly everything.
Poly everything.
Polytheist,
Oh, that's an interesting thing.
polyamorous. I don't know
Yeah.
what else. Poly.
The only thing that's they're not poly.
As long as she's not a
anymore
parrot,
is
that's
they're
fine.
not poly.
And,
but yes, that is what we try to do, and we're also thinking about branching into. I may or may not be working on a script right now that's going over performative gender theory.
Cool.
As well as various other topics in contemporary gender studies and sociological analysis of gender. Breaking that all down and seeing if I can get that into somewhat layman's language. You understand this, Shae, right?
The basics.
We're not
In fact,
all as
Shae doesn't know this
educated
yet,
in
but I'm-
sociology as you, Callan.
I feel like a lot of it's intuitive, but like obviously not all of it is.
Oh, that's the same in anything.
But,
Sociology, when you get it, that when you actually get out in the world and actually listen to people and like listen to their issues and whatnot and start connecting the dots, sociology is very intuitive. If you don't do that though, and you just like to stay in your nice little narrow white perspective, then it can be the most unintuitive thing like ever.
Yeah.
But hey, it's also, by the way, the hardest subject. It's harder than physics because physics you actually have something, you have a ruler you can measure with. In sociology, we get to make all that from scratch. Yay, measure theory. Okay, that aside, So yeah, I might be doing some of those videos in the future to help get those concepts out there. And yeah, that is what the purpose of our channel is. And if we get big enough, there might be some other advocacy stuff we can do outside the channel as well.
Yeah.
Depending
Although,
on if my plans come through.
I feel like I do want to clarify one quick point, though. Of course, like, the target demographic right now isn't just, like, people in those communities. We want to be open to, like, everyone, you know? Like, we have had a Leikai on the channel, of course, and Leikai is part of, like, a big leftist, like, community as well as, like, the polytheist and atheist communities here. Um, we had Ozma and Christy Abbey on the show as well, and they have, like, I don't know what I was getting here, though. We understood how, like, the atheist and, like, polytheist communities tend to be sometimes. However, like,
Well,
that's just not our sole focus. It's just about, like,
Well,
building
actually, I mean,
community and
even
building
with
a
like the
support group.
polytheist here, like as someone who's like been who operates in both spaces, I tend to see a lot more transphobia on the atheist side than I do on
Yeah,
the
no,
polytheist side. But that's all.
100% agreed. And
Yeah.
I've figured it's, like, few and far between there, but focus groups exist.
Right. Yeah. No.
Fortunately.
Generally
Yeah,
within
yeah.
like
Well,
the
unfortunately,
polytheist
people
community,
with similar
like,
ideas tend to congregate. So you get all the bigots will huddle in a corner together. And unfortunately, in anything, especially like when you're talking about atheism, you've got people who are only in this one group because of one thing: they don't believe in a god. And all
which
your
actually
other
kinda makes it
ideologies come
interesting.
from fucking anywhere. So
Well, that's the interesting thing, sociologically speaking. It's like all these little like pockets sort of like congregate together, and they all
Yeah.
sort of form this super network that sort of makes up the atheist community. But each one is sort of like its own little pocket with its own little like set of culture and prejudices and whatnot.
exactly.
It's a lot more like out on display, if that makes sense. But to say that there are problems within the atheist community, especially in regards to like trans acceptance, because like it or not, religion does actually have a huge binding
Lasting effect.
impact in terms of making people part of a community. Whereas atheists who tend to not want to be religious or not religious, they don't necessarily have that support structure. So part of what the project is also doing is providing that support structure for trans atheists who don't necessarily have it. Because as a heathen, when I have like issues and whatnot, I have a community I can go back and follow. Whereas for I know a number of trans atheists, they don't really have that community.
Yeah.
So are you saying that eventually we need to start pumping out content against religious, like, LGBTQ plus bigotry?
Well,
Maybe
any
doing that.
bigotry. I don't think you can just pin it down on religion. Certainly, a lot of the basis for bigotry comes out of the Abrahamic religions, but
Yeah, no, so far on the channel we haven't
The
focused
thing
on
with,
religion at all.
so
We've
the
only
thing with
focused
religion
on, like,
that a
alt-right
lot
talking heads pushing their, like, transphobic bullshit. Because we do engage in response content as well. Everybody does it. You can't have a channel without response
you
content.
can't. I mean,
You know?
more than
Just
50% of my
unfortunately, that's how
channel is to
YouTube
response
works.
content.
There's nothing wrong with
So-
it. You can have response content as well as educational content as well as, like,
Yeah,
interviews.
which is
It's
what
totally
I'm planning.
totally good.
So.
You're doing it. We're
But,
both doing
yeah.
it.
Yeah, so I know, but I'm actually planning on more educational stuff. I'm actually planning an educational series on maths and science, so that should be
that
more
sounds like
interesting.
fun.
Yeah, it will be, because I want to go back to basic principles and explain to people why maths is important, and even the stuff that you don't think is important. So, and do it from basic principles rather than the
Math is
complex
life.
equations. Sorry?
I love complex equations. I have fun.
I
doing
do too, but
differential
not
equations.
everybody
Those are-
can get them.
They're not that. It's just about putting. It's just solving for a function. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes,
it's not
it
that
is.
difficult.
But not everyone gets it. You know, if you throw algebra at somebody who really doesn't get maths, they just look at the letters and go, "What? I don't need letters. I only deal in numbers." So,
In fact,
It-
Shae,
it's-
believe it or not, Shae tonight is going to be doing differential equations, right, Shae?
Probably not.
Shae? No, you are.
Yeah,
I'm
it
just
looks
going to
like
assign you a bunch of separable
it
differential
looks like I'm
equations.
not going out to protest tonight, which I guess is probably a good thing.
All right, well, that
But
means you won't be having to send photos of your kit.
yeah, I don't know. Look, I don't have a helmet or goggles or anything, okay? But I know what the fuck I'm doing, and I have people that I would have been going with if we were going at all.
I know. I'm kidding. I'm just pushing your buttons. Okay.
Okay.
Anyhow, so Shae, your mic.
Yeah, you
Is
might
it freaking
Shae.
out again?
It is.
Is it better?
Yeah, that's
Is
better.
it better?
Now
Yep.
it is.
Okay. I need to get a new
But yeah, math is,
mic cable.
but even like more important than like the thing with math is that math becomes a lot easier if you understand the logic behind it. So also like doing a logic series is a huge thing.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I've got a few plans. One of the
People need
things
to learn
is
Otis Tollins is.
I'm going to be doing both pre-recorded stuff where I'm going to discuss some of the things in history with maths and the basic principles that get people there. But I'm also planning on having a few shows where I have people on to talk about the links between maths and philosophy and basic logic, as well as discuss these things with other people because I think it'll make it more interesting overall. So I got some long term plans that I want to put into shape. I'm also not planning on doing all these videos of me just sitting in front of a camera doing it. I'm actually going to go out places and talk to a few professors. I'm also going to go on into locations and describe things. I've got a couple of places in mind for demonstrating how maths is very practical to the things we do in everyday life. So it'll be
Okay.
a bit
That's
different to my
awesome.
normal content. So I'm hoping I can make something that looks really good out of it, but it's a long-term project that's going to take a lot of back work on my part to get there. But I'm looking forward to doing it. It's a challenge. So
Cool.
in the meantime,
Yeah.
still be yelling at the occasional flat earther who's ridiculous and other bigots and people like that because that's always fun and people like it. Sorry?
Jan, look. We know the universe is flat, okay?
Do we though? See, this is the
actually,
thing.
I think the current evidence suggests that it does.
The current evidence is that
When I say flat,
Well-
flat in terms of like universe, it's actually this really complex sort of idea that people probably don't understand.
well, the
Because
whole
it
point
involves
about
a
looking at
differentiation between flat and hyperbolic space.
the whole point about saying that our universe is flat is from measurements we've done to within a certain percentage, our visible universe appears flat. But how big a percentage of the actual universe is our visible universe?
That will probably forever remain unknown unless we can get past the particle horizon.
Exactly. So we've got this issue that it kind of does, but we don't know, and there's nothing wrong with saying we don't know. So, at the moment, yes, we think it's probably mostly flat and fairly homogeneous. But there are a few evidences. I hate you saying words like that because they're not really words. There are hints out there that the universe may not be as flat as we first thought. So, it's an interesting point of view, and don't drag me down science because we're not talking science at the moment.
Yeah, it's just the problem is like there's evidence that like points in like all three of the options, right? Like a negative curvature, positive curvature, and no curvature. So like
Yeah.
all of it's kind of contradicting itself right now, and we're not like at a point yet.
Well, the
where
thing
we
is,
can, like,
okay, look, here's the thing that you guys don't understand. So our universe is actually like this sort of like crystal spear that hangs from the tree of Yggdrasil.
we're not at a point yet where we can like say definitively what shape the universe is.
No.
We do
We're
know
not.
about like the curvature of space-time through gravity. But even
Well, we're like in terms of viewing the universe, we're like the flat earther who stands in the middle of a field and goes, "Yep, it's flat." Because that's where we're at. We only have our little tiny horizon of the universe that we can see, and we cannot see beyond that. So
But
effectively, we
Jen,
don't know.
Jen,
Yeah.
the Earth is flat. That's why we get paid by NASA.
Oh, I forgot about that. No, shush!
See, that's
I'm
the
not
thing.
supposed to be selling the NASA line here. I need my shield check. I don't get anything else.
It's Shae, get Jen her
See-
shield check, alright?
I'll talk to Soros, okay? No
Okay.
promises. There's sometimes a delay. I have to go through.
Well, it's very hard to find the bunker.
Payroll department. Yeah, I have to go through the payroll department before I can even talk to Soros. So
Yeah.
like, just
And I
okay?
realize there's problems with sending mail to the bunker in Carolina. So yeah, it's.
And it's
God damn.
dark. Yeah, and what are you, like, in California or something? I forget where we sent all the Australian shitholes.
Carolina. Yeah, it's a huge
Ah.
bunker underground. If Carolina goes really bad, we're just all going to come up and declare independence.
I wish I was still in California a little bit.
Oh dear.
She's a
Healthcare's better
California
there.
girl in an anonymous world.
In a what
What?
world?
Anonymous world, so, because I don't want to dox you.
Oh, I'll tell you straight up that I live in the Phoenix area.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
She's
like
a
I'm not
Cali
going to tell
girl
you
in
the.
an Arizona world.
You're a desert
I'm
girl.
not going to tell you exactly what city, but like the Phoenix metropolitan area kind of like covers like 9 million people. Also, there's multiple different cities in Maricopa County. Like, just the entire swath of it is called like the Phoenix metropolitan area.
Well, I mean, the good thing is we all know that you don't exist anyway, so that's
Yeah,
irrelevant.
I'm actually a
Well,
CGI
trans people don't exist.
animation
Don't
of
you know that?
Calon's
We're all
invention.
fake.
No, Australians are fake. Trans people are real. I'm sorry, Jen.
Oh,
You're not real.
haven't you had the new memo?
Are any of us real? Am I just a brain in a vat? Am I imagining all of this?
Thank you, Shae.
Yes. The answer is yes, Shae. I am a figment of your imagination.
Why do we need to be brains in the vat? Couldn't we just be a computer simulation?
We could, potentially. Maybe.
I mean, that would make as much sense as
Ah.
anything else. Although, I would like to have personal words with the person who programmed it.
Fuck that person.
Yeah, fuck you.
So,
Can't you
I
get your
did
shit
it
right?
Well, no, hold up. Hold up, no, I
You
didn't want
gave
to
me
tell
the
you
wrong
guys this, but
parts.
Jay, I didn't
What?
want to tell you this. I didn't want to tell you this, but we actually had to restart the simulation like last Thursday. All your memories are fake and everything. And
So the universe really was created last Thursday?
yes,
Oh god.
I actually debugged the code myself.
Also, it's your
I
fault
missed
we're the wrong
part
gender.
where
Calon is God.
Calon is God.
That's
I mean-
that's all you need to know, everybody. Calon is
Look,
God.
I had to sort through 6 billion data points of people to determine their genders. I'm gonna make a few mistakes.
Hey, I don't know if Maddie Verity is watching, but it's good to see you again. Old fan of my old channel.
Cool.
So, yeah, like it's so weird.
Oh
like,
yeah, she used to
seeing,
be an
like-
atheist.
And I've just changed
I'm
Calon's
still an
name
atheist.
to represent her godhood to Freya.
I'm still an atheist. Just the thing is that like
Although I think I've
Not
spelled
when it
Freya
comes to
wrong, so
atheism,
she's going to
no.
crucify me. So
I will crucify.
Froya.
Fraya.
What?
So it's Old Norse.
I'm so
In
lost.
Old- they would say Froya.
How's it actually spelled in the Old Norse then?
That would just probably it's.
Oh,
spelled
people know who I mean
FR
when I type Freya. You're Freya now, Calon. You're the goddess.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna have to leave because I need to go sleep.
I think we'll wind up anyway. We've been going for 2 hours, and this has been an absolutely awesome stream, and I'd dearly love to do it again with you guys at some point.
Yeah, sure.
Have you back. Yeah, because this has been amazing. And thank you both for joining me. Do you want to shout out what you're up to this coming week on your channel?
This
Aw.
week, tomorrow, we're probably going to find some sort of interview to arrange.
That's a good way to.
Actually, we do have an interview in the making. We just have to schedule it. I had things planned for today and tomorrow, but like with everything going on, the last like 4 or 5 days, I have not been like okay, really. Like
We've been
had
yeah.
an existential break just a couple of days ago. I felt bad for not going out and protesting.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
world's like
Shae,
that.
I-
at the moment.
Whole other story.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into that right now. But the next interview that we should be having is a member of our server who goes by Carbuncle. They are he is a trans man.
Cool.
And we wanted to have a couple of interviews with like trans men and trans masculine individuals because we feel like they don't get enough representation. And that's exactly what Carbuncle and other trans masks have told us individually as well. Like most of the representation that you get is like trans women, and like their voices need to be heard just as much as ours, and then oftentimes that doesn't happen. So
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Exactly. So yeah, that's what we'll be up to tomorrow.
So
and
if anyone in the
beyond
chat who hasn't subscribed to these lovely people, links in the description, please go and subscribe. I know we made them hit 100 whilst we were during the stream, and that's amazing. But any extra buffer
Thank
you
you
can
so
give them,
much.
because YouTube sucks and tends to take subscribers away randomly, and I hate them for it. So
no, they inactive and like bot accounts. That's what
Yeah.
usually
yeah,
happens.
mostly. But I have had people who've messaged and say YouTube unsubscribe me. So it has been.
That's happened to me.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Sometimes it has happened by mistake, but
Yeah.
like not very often.
No, not very often.
Also, hearts to you, Ange. She's
So-
in
I
the
got-
chat.
Anyone who's
And I
wondering
can
what
say
I'm
that,
up
though.
to, tomorrow night, US, and oh god, I can't remember. It's 7 p.m. I think Eastern Standard Time. Lissy Lou, Danger Hissy, and myself are going to do the first of our
Lucy
streams.
Lou?
Lissy Lou, not Lucy Lou. Lissy Lou.
Oh,
Atheist
okay.
pastor's
Lucy
wife.
Lou. I hear
Um,
Lucy Lou, and I'm like, what?
No,
Charlie's
no,
Angels?
Lissy Lou. She's atheist pastor's wife. Danger Hissy, who's a historian, and I are going to be doing starting our series on Harry Potter. Now, before everybody goes, but J.K. Rowling is a raging TERF. We know we're going to take the piss out of J.K. Rowling during this because we all fucking hate her because she's a goddamn TERFy bitch. But that doesn't mean you can't you can't like the books. You can like the books and separate that from the retarded author. So we're going to be doing a stream on that and taking the piss out of JK at the same time.
It's probably not safe to have your kids around her either.
Oh no, I wouldn't think it was safe to have your kids around her.
J.K. Rowling, I mean.
J.K. Rowling, yeah.
I'm not sure if you know about the recent controversy.
Yes, I do. I
What
don't know
did
if
she
the
do?
chat does if you
Rowling
want to
is
fill
not
them in.
safe around children. Oh, somebody said that like J.K. Rowling probably isn't safe to have around kids because of her, transphobia, and like how that'll
To be fair, prior to that, J.K. Rowling had
affect
retweeted
children and affect trans kids. And
Yeah,
then, like,
had previously retweeted a tweet that she'd done ages ago that basically suggested that trans people were dangerous to have around kids. Because this is the kind of turf that J.K. Rowling is. She tries to hide it and tries to say, oh, it was a mistake, I didn't mean to do it. But she follows almost every major turf in the UK, and she retweets their shit and likes it constantly. She's a turf. She just doesn't like to admit she's a turf. And she's also she's not a nice person, to be honest. But her books whilst not classically great literature, are good and have been inspirational to a lot of kids. And there's nothing wrong with the community reclaiming those books and saying they're good and then writing their own fan fiction in those universes. I see that as a good thing. Just admit
make
that
Harry
she's the fucking
trans.
turf she is. And go and buy your
Harry
books
trans.
second hand. Don't buy them new. Don't give the bitch any more money.
Anytime a transphobe gets upset that people made a character gay or trans, we're gonna make 5 more gay or trans.
Yeah.
Hermione
That's
is
what we do with gender, by the way. Whenever you
trans
disrespect our
and
gender,
gay.
whenever you disrespect your genders, we're gonna add 5 more genders.
Aren't there infinite genders?
Yeah,
actually.
And within each of those genders, there's another infinite genders because you can have subsets of infinites within infinites. So
You can. This
Yeah.
is true. You can
Math
have
is-
the set
math
of
is beautiful.
omegas.
yeah, math is
In
beautiful.
fact,
1
we
and
can even
2?
have.
Did you know there's infinite numbers between 1 and 2? Oh my god.
Yeah.
Did you know
How
that
could
there
you
just
find infinity in
even-
such a
no,
you know,
Shae?
finite space?
Here's one, Shae. Shae,
What?
Imagine if I had infinite amount of balls, and on one set I
That
put
would make
the odd
gender
numbers, and on
reassignment surgery
even.
complicated. Sorry.
It would make it impossible. But anyhow, I could pull these two apart, and I could have the same amount as if they were together.
Yeah. Number
of how
mapping is
infinities work.
fun.
The Banach-Tarski paradox.
Yep. Beautiful. All right. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you guys so much. It's been absolutely brilliant and wonderful and fun. Thank you to everybody in the chat, and we will catch you all on the next one.